Hey guys, Mike Toy, Bonsai Boise. Thought I'd give you a quick tour of the trees now that spring is in full force. So let's go take a look. All right. So the first thing I'll point out is that I've thinned out the herd quite a bit. Now this does not include the indoor trees, at least not all of them. I got a couple of them out here. I'm starting to transition them out. But I lost a lot of trees last year by having them all on my patio at the apartment. The patio was north facing and they just didn't get enough sun, and I lost quite a few. So let's start down here. So here's my Shantung maple. I just did a couple of videos on this recently, on repotting it and the air layer. Luckily it survived. Don't have huge hopes for the air layer though. It sprouted out some leaves, and then the leaves died off real quick. And then some new buds started to pop. But this is my fourth attempt at an air layer, and they've never worked, so I'm not holding my breath. Here's one of my silver maples. A little S-shaped silver maple. I've noticed that the silver maples have been slow to leaf out this year, which is slightly unusual for them, but they're leafing out, and that's the important part. Here's a weeping willow. This was a gift to me from Eric over at Dreaming Green Nursery. Oh, one other quick thing I'm going to point out on this Shantung, now that it's happening. This thing's back bud on old wood, super easy. Hopefully you can see that's really bright over here today. And I'll point out on the silver maple, a lot of dieback on some of these branches. So here's one I've been holding my breath on slightly. This is one of my oaks, just in a little trading pot here. I've always loved this one. I had 3 of them. I'm down to just this one. And I'm not even 100% sure if this one is alive. I've been looking very intently. Having some focus issues here today. The buds look like they're getting ready to pop, but they've looked like this for about a week or so. What gives me hope is areas like this, as you can see, green down here, and then this part appears, clearly dead as dieback. So it's the green that alone gives me hope that this is going to leaf out, and I do think that the oaks leaf out later than most other trees. But I've just always liked it. I like the movement down here on the trunk. And what that is, by the way, is that I didn't cut the taproot. I slowly expose the taproot, and it kind of turned into trunk. So, high hopes for that. Here's my green ash. Pardon me, my green ash. It was one of the first ones to leaf out, and normally it leaves out later. So it's loving life right now, looking good. Got a dual trunk. I repotted this about 2 years ago. Made some big cuts and branch selections. One thing I'll point out, I used a magic marker to mark some of the branches to keep and lose. Learning experience, don't do that, because you pretty much can never get rid of the marks after that. Speaking of green ash, this guy here, this was a cutting from that spot. I never knew you could root cuttings from a green ash, but apparently you can. Did that last year. I'm super happy and hopeful for this one because while it's still young and small, it's just got some cool movement already. So, high hopes for that. One of my privets. Did a video on both of the privets. Here's the other one. Did a video on these a month or 2 ago. They're bouncing back and loving life. Still in training pots for now. Let's put them over there. So this one is interesting in a way. Moonrise full moon maple. So I got this on clearance last year for like $3. The leaves were pretty crusty looking and it just looked like it was not going to survive. I thought, why not? It was in the fall. I repotted it in the fall, you know, broke every rule there was about repotting. But this year it bounced back and is doing okay. Another interesting thing to note here, if you look at these leaves. So this is a graft. I'll show you here. You see there where the full, what is it called? Full moonrise full moon was grafted onto some other kind of Japanese maple down there. And these are the native leaves from the tree sprouting out below. And this is the new kind. So, I don't know. It's kind of interesting, I guess. Here's a bay willow. I used to have a whole bunch of these just from cuttings about 5 years ago. This is the last one remaining. Got a cool root base there. I kind of exposed some of the root base when I repotted it in this training pot. Yeah. There's a dwarf Alberta spruce. This one was suffering quite a bit from being on a patio last year. But as you can see now, I'm really hoping that this shows up because it's bright out here and I can't tell. As you can see, it's got new growth all over the place. First bought this one on clearance after Christmas about 4 years ago. Yeah, I like that one. Some kind of seedling that looked like it was doing okay, and then all of a sudden it just changed its mind and died. At least I think. There's a couple of Amur maples. I repotted this into this training pot a month or two ago. Not really much to brag about yet, but cool structure and cool tree. I've always liked Amur maples. They don't really like being pruned too much, though, I can tell you that. Seems like every time I prune it, they get real mopey and sad for a while. Here's one that I wired up last year into this shape, so I've got kind of a curvy thing going. Yeah, I like Amur maples. Couple of Siberian elms. I just did a video on these recently too, if you want to call it that. It was more like a mishmash of a bunch of little clips that I took. So this is the main, call it the mother tree, that I've taken matting cuttings from in air layers. Took an air layer from right here, and that's what this is. The one bummer is that this branch here looks like has completely died off. Yep. But all is not lost. Just got them in these training pots for now. And I don't mean to skip around here, but here is the Siberian elm forest. Did a video on this one recently too. I had to wire it up because at the time I didn't realize just how windy it is in this little spot back here. It's kind of like a little wind tunnel. You can see this. So here's my house and the neighbor's house and shed. So for whatever reason, it's just kind of a swirl of wind happens right here, coming from that direction and this little opening here. So I kept walking out here and finding this guy, like the biggest, tallest one, just laying down, roots exposed. So I tried everything. I tried putting rocks around it, piled up more soil. It still just kept falling over. So I finally sort of tied it up on each end. One there, one there. Another interesting note. Oops, as I step on my dog here, who decided to fall asleep behind me. A couple of the smaller cuttings, this one and this one, died off, or so I thought. Lost all its leaves when I brought it outside. And then just decided, we'll live. And they came back to life. Speaking of, there's a smaller Siberian elm, which was a cutting in the greenhouse. Taking it straight from the greenhouse to outside is not a great idea. As you can see, it kind of gets crusty. Leaves get all crusty and weird and pouty. So, learning from this, I've started to transition the trees more. Put them on the front porch or something, or the back porch for a week or so, then bring them outside. It avoids that. I'll tell you my saddest story here. Let me find it before I forget. Just did a video on this one. My loop-de-loop silver maple. I am 99% sure it died. That is the saddest loss yet. I loved this little guy. And I'm not even sure why it died. I made some big cuts, did some root pruning. One of the cuts I kept as a cutting. I just put it in a bottle of water, and even it sprouted some leaves, which are still on it right now. So I know that it was alive up to this point. So whatever I did must have killed it. Maybe I put it outside too soon. I don't know. So sad. Where were we? Honey locust. Still in training, but for whatever reason, I just like this little guy. It's interesting and cool and weird, neat. Hinoki cypress. I've never done a video on this one, and I kind of wish I would have. It's got some cool trunk movement. They're cool looking trees. I wasn't 100% sure if it was going to survive, but it's in this frost, they call it a frost-proof pot, and apparently that worked. Some little Amur maple seeds popping up. Virginia creeper. The interesting part on this one is this weird, I don't even know what to call it, branching root base kind of thing. This part might have died off, actually. I don't know. It's really more of a vine than it is a tree, but hey, who says we got to follow any rules? We can bonsai whatever we want. And I decided to bonsai that. My juniper. I call this one my Mr. Miyagi tree. Had a bit of a rough fall and winter, but bounced back. As you can see, there's some green growth popping out different spots. There's stony baloney. With this one, I'm not 100% happy with how this cascade is going. So I've tried to wire it a couple times, didn't really take. It eats into the branch, but it doesn't keep its shape. So I'm wrestling with that. I'd like to work on that a little bit more and put some more movement in this, because just how long and straight, I just don't like it. Options are trying to wire it again, maybe cutting it here, or there, you know, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Here's a couple more Siberian elm cuttings from, these are about 2 years old now. I'm really growing to love these elms. They're fast growing, they're tough, they're flexible, you can do a lot with them, you can take cuttings from them. The leaves are small. They're just a lot of fun. There's another one, got this curve. This was going to be a kind of a sacrificial branch, I think. I don't know. I don't really remember why I left it. I don't even know why I still leave it. I should probably get rid of it because it doesn't fit any kind of shape. Don't need to make any decisions on it today. Here's another dwarf Alberta spruce that I haven't done anything with yet. Let's see if I can give you a look at this root base here. Hold on. Hard to see, but a cool big old root base down there. So lots of potential. You can see, popped a lot of new growth here. See, these are like the little caps. And then pull one off. And there's the new growth. So I don't want to mess with it while it's still in the middle of growing. I want to let it get nice and healthy, and then later I'll mess with it. Silver maple. Had this for quite a while. Maybe, I don't know, 10 years or so. Not really sure what I'm doing with it. It's got some weird stuff happening. I'll show you this here. So the bark, kind of like chipping away. Never a good sign. But I'm not 100% sure I'm going to keep this top part anyways. I don't really like the shape of it right now. Kind of like this pom-pom effect where it goes up, straight up, and then boom. Hard left and a hard right. So who knows? I might get drastic with it at some point and just cut the top part off, or maybe even try an air layer. I don't think I've ever tried to air layer silver maple, so I might try that. And then just keep this. It'll give it some movement, some character, and some taper. Pretty extreme though. Some seeds that I hope grow. Here's my honeysuckle. I did an air layer on this a couple years ago that did not take. It ended up dying, but I think it only died because it was on the patio, my front facing patio. Luckily, the bottom stayed alive. Got a lot of suckers popping out of the bottom part, but some coming out of the top. Pretty hard to see. But it's got this weird, gnarly looking bark that I've always thought was cool. Some people don't like this type of thing, but I like it. This was my Costco purchase. It's a crabapple tree. Always thought that it had great potential. I still do. Got a great root base and root flare. I believe it was grafted, probably early on in its life. I think that's probably the graft mark there. An interesting thing is that a lot of my trees, both indoor and outdoor, are starting to pop out their native leaves and reject the grafted part. This one hasn't rejected any branches yet, but a lot of my other trees have. Anyways, next spring I'm hoping I'll transfer this into an actual bonsai pot. There's a couple of blueberry bushes. I was going to have it as kind of a blueberry clump, but a lot of it died off. So now I'm not so sure. I'm just kind of like letting it bounce back and do its thing. My other blueberry bush. Oh, here's other doggy, Luna, here to inspect. Got a cool root base there. Not much else to talk about on that one. And I'm in the process of moving a lot of the indoor trees outdoor. But as you can see, this is what happens. This is a Ficus benjamina. When you take it straight from the greenhouse to outside. In the greenhouse, they have perfect conditions. Like no wind, bright, humid, just awesome. They love it. Then you move them outside and all of a sudden it gets cold and then it gets hot and then it gets sunny and then it gets rainy and they kind of freak out and do this. This was my first one that I moved outside, kind of my experimental tree. I moved this out in mid-April, so close to a month ago. A lot of it died off. One interesting thing that I learned from this though is that I actually thought the older leaves would take the transition better and the newer leaves would die off. Hi, Luna. But the opposite happened. The older leaves died off first, and it was the newer growth that survived. So, fun fact. Let's take a look over here. Corkscrew willow. Finally repotted into this pot a couple months ago. Always loved this tree. It's a little wild and bushy looking right now. Done a few videos on this one in particular in the past. Probably going to lose these. I kept them on just as insurance, just in case some of this died off more. A lot of it died off. But I think we're going to, pardon me, probably going to have to lose these bottom ones now. Anyways, it's nice and healthy and growing and doing great. It's a dwarf Korean lilac. Did a video on this one a few years ago. It's not a super fast grower. I trim it maybe once a year. Repotted it once in 5 years. Some more indoor trees that I am transitioning outdoor. Here's Sheffy. Let me give you a quick look at what Sheffy was doing and why he is out here now. Yeah, so as you can see, it was not doing good. And I'll tell you what happened. What happened is I did the clear plastic bag thing to get more of these cool aerial roots, as I did with a lot of the indoor trees. And then I forgot about it. I forgot about it for too long. And it got that powdery mildew stuff on it. So did a repot on this a week or so ago. And I've been bringing it inside at night and then putting it outside when it's nice and warm and sunny. So just want to get it healthy. Got one more to show you here. So here it is. It's not exactly a bonsai yet. Someday it will, but right now I just like it the way it is. This is a presidential Grevy lilac. Awesome flowers. Here, take a sniff. Just kidding, I'll sniff for you. It smells great, take my word for it. But the main attraction to this, honestly, if you go down, it says root base. Look at that. Great root flare, old gnarly looking bark. Good nabari. Needs a little work to address some of these crossover type things, but you know. Lots and lots of potential, which I love. When I repotted into this pot, I just kind of slip potted it, and I added a lot of organic soil in with the mix, and it's loving it. I've noticed that these flowering trees tend to love a little more organic in it, but do it sparingly and be conscious of it, because they can get waterlogged and, you know, experience other issues. But anyways, that's the presidential grevy. So that's the quick tour of the trees for now. Thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.